apparently Kenyans consume the most alcohol in East Africa. It's not the first time we're hearing about this. So on page 11, the study that Kenya leads in alcohol use. We consume 75% of the liquor produced in East Africa.
I think the Nakada chair last week told us that
Yes.
we 3/4 of the alcohol in
Booze.
East Africa is consumed by Benji and the ilk in the town. That whatever it is that you drink, whether you drink wine
No,
or
I'm not much of a drinker at all.
Well, you drink
that's it.
Whatever little you
the
drink.
part that you do your part to make sure that you take it.
Mine is probably like a drop. I'm not much
Yeah,
of
it's
a
a drop of the 75%.
But I mean, I think when you listen to Nakada Chair, I mean, and last week, and you look at these statistics, they point out to not a sorry state, but something that the country should have a conversation, a discussion with. Well, the Germans do drink and they do perform as well. But I think we should find a national psyche, a national, kind of conversation of what these drinks are doing to us or how it's helping us, Benji.
Really national dialogue like we had on the wage bill on alcoholism.
Who will lead that dialogue? President?
No, Mutudo, passionately.
Let's move on.
Oh gosh, let's move on.
I think you missed my point.
But yes,
Let's move on from that one.
we got the point. But of course, the alcohol blows are coming in. Do you get a sense that they're helping with the fight?
As with everything in this country, because we're such a money-mad country, the only focus now on alcohol is how much money can be made from it. That always is wrong-headed. It has checked a bit of the wanton excessive drinking and driving, which is obviously dangerous and ridiculous. But we're making progress in some ways, except that, again, it all comes down to money in many ways. So,
In many ways.
yeah, so they probably only get more so they can use to get more money, etc., etc.
I will support alcohol, till the cows come home.
You support it.
I will support it. If you've driven along Langata Road on Saturday morning and Sunday morning and see that roundabout after people have come from their
Yep.
drinks, and there would always be an accident, there's a car that rolls over the roundabout. Ever since this alcohol, that hasn't happened. And statistics have shown that on the roads in Nairobi,
Significantly reduced.
not only significant, but it's almost zero.
Yeah, you don't see
No,
that.
absolutely. So we have to take these difficult decisions and say, well, this is something that we need to work on, like, police using advantage of this and the authorities making sure that, Kenyans cannot have their fun in will. We should not throw out baby with the bathwater in this.
And yeah, Mutudo did announce here that as Nakada, they're getting more alcohol blows, so it's going to be, more serious going forward.
I think one of the things that we need to look at as we have this discussion is why do Kenyans drink so much? I think, unlike countries like Germany and England, where it's more of celebratory drinking, there's a sense of frustration here with the lack of opportunity. Most Kenyans are so broke and unable to invest and
using
save.
to buy the alcohol?
Yes.
Benji? Are you saying only the poor Kenyans drink alcohol?
Well, first of all, majority Kenyans are poor. So if that drink is happening, you cannot attribute it only to the elite.
But
Alcohol
Benji,
is not
So
free,
again, I'm saying
Benji.
it's a lifestyle.
Alcohol is not free.
No, we cannot let Benji work out
The
with this
little
one.
that they earn, they drink, most of it.
Okay, so I say that. You can't say that the poor Kenyans are the ones. I mean, they're not caught on Langata Road driving. That is clearly out of the
I'm not
question.
talking about poor. I'm talking about
And just the middle class, the most.
but how much of the middle class are rich? How much of the middle class?
It's not about
I actually
middle
had this
class.
discussion 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's not about the middle class being rich. It's about the middle class using what they're using
Yeah.
to drink.
I'm saying
It's not about being rich.
I'm saying the reality of cost of living and the distance or challenge of, for example, owning a home and what have you, leave a lot of people feeling so hopeless
So
that
they drink.
they turn to drinking. Yes, that's the truth.
I don't
We
think
need
so.
to. It is actually very true. It is very
I just
true.
think people love their drink a lot in Kenya. It's not the hopelessness. It's just, look at end month, what happens. All the cars are out, all their joints
Why?
are full to capacity.
Why?
Kenyans love to party.
No, Sophia, that's when they have money. That's when they have money. Exactly my point. The little money they get, that's when they can drive, that's when they can drink.
Since you're both gentlemen on set, I'll ask you this question as my earpiece decides to drop. Crazy Monday pull out to take you through your craziness on Monday. Lies men tell and how cheating men cover their tracks.
I think this should be lies women tell and how cheating women cover their tracks. I actually saw a headline last night.
Really, Benji.
And before that, it was
Yeah, that it was.
All right, well,
I
there's
mean, who
that.
lies more, women or men? I don't know. I think we all.
You're
know
a
the
man.
answer.
Tell us what you think, your experience.
I've heard the word men are greedy, women are selfish.
James, why are you so quiet?
the same difference.
Let's move to the Daily Nation. Headline story: audit exposes loss of 4 billion shillings in fishy cash deals. So you have NHIF inflated cost of car park by 3 billion. And while NSSF bought land for 1.1 billion shillings in public forests that it cannot develop. Does it get any worse?
Well, NSSF, and for me, it's one of, the other day when they talked about, increasing, our contribution to NSSF and, NHIF and all these things. And the problem that these things are a cash cow, they're used by politicians, and it's always a mess, when you go to look at the audit. Ever since the creation of this institution, you can trace it back from the 80s.
You know what my real issue is? Smart, you know what my real issue is? Audit report 2011-2012 is when this stuff comes out. NHIF, who was that under? Medical Services Minister Anyang' Nyong'o. What is Anyang' Nyong'o? Reformer par excellence. Okay. There's your contradiction. There's your whole political, journey going downhill and being proved to be a fraudulent, deceptive, oxymoron.
That's the politics of it. But Benji, we cannot allow this to
You
go.
cannot dismiss theft by calling it politics.
Yeah, no. Whether it's Anyang' Nyong'o or it's whoever, it's corruption, it's theft of money. That should be called as it is.
Yeah. I'm just saying it's more shocking when it's happening under a reformer, because that's not what you expect. And that's why I said, I tweeted this morning that Kimunya, for all his wars, has never stood anywhere and claimed to be a reformer. He has been consistently consistent. This is who I am.
What has
every
he
minister
said?
I go to, virtually every ministry he went into, controversy followed him. He had all manner of issues, and today he's in court accused of theft.
There's a big story all over the world. Everyone's attention is fixed on this plane. It's been missing. Pilot suicide or terrorism, all manner of theories, everybody.
It's an unbelievable story.
Analysts, experts trying to understand what could have happened. It's really quite...
Well, the MH30 and the issue that surrounding this flight, it's going to 10 days now.
Yeah.
And it's moved from it being a search and recovery, then into a mystery, then now it's a criminal investigation.
Yeah.
But I think what they're looking at now is looking at the entire flight and look at the people in that flight, look at the backgrounds. They had 20 people, 20 fellows who work for Freeskill, who are guys who are used to make, the chips that can actually even, make, clock a plane and all these things. So that builds up the mystery. I mean, why would 20 fellows who apparently can make chip and can actually have the technology of switching off a transponder in a plane, and then that plane just disappears?
You know who I really suspect, Sophia? One of the co-pilots is a guy that is so good, an engineer. One of these
The
geeks.
captain.
Yeah, the captain.
Yeah.
He's a geek. He understands the technology inside out, and he actually built a flight simulator in his house.
Wow.
One where you sit inside and you actually are in a cockpit and it's like you're flying. I mean, simulators are so complicated and so expensive. I don't even know if we have one in Kenya, do we?
I think Kiki
But
is
in a
getting
world
one.
where we are not
Getting
talking
one.
about
We actually don't have one
being
in
a
Kenya.
global village, technologically savvy, that you can, nothing would happen without the attention of anybody. Where is this? Where are they? Why is it so hard to...
No, here's the thing. So I think a guy like that was easily able to turn off the transponders, mask the position or the presence of the plane. What I don't understand is where then he flew it to and how,
And
without
for what?
getting into
So now
other
you have
topics.
these people somewhere. Make demands or something. Well, you just wanted to have them somewhere?
Well, I think the difficult question that maybe everyone does not want to handle in this case is, if this plane, 1 hour, 20 minutes into the flight, the transponders are switched off, the military picks up the radar, then the military says, we noticed a rogue aircraft. Then it took a detour.
Yeah.
And for 7 hours, it was on. So either we are seeing a massive cover-up of something that was shot down, or just everyone knows what
Cover up,
this
I
is.
doubt it, but he's right. The military should have intervened and even communicated.
And also
And
what they say, even if they switched off the transponders, it's never really off. Just like your phones, you switch them off, but really you can still be found.
Yeah, but not
It
if
was
you have
picked
a
up.
geek.
It was picked up for 7 hours. Much later, it was picked up for 7 hours. They actually tell up for 7 hours what went and flew. So we need to know. There's something that doesn't make a lot of sense. You
Yeah.
cannot just a whole plane.
I always
This building
preach.
cannot just disappear.
I always preach as a principle in governance philosophy. Two things: sense of purpose, sense of urgency. That's the way to forestall problems. Sense of the minute you see something, get out of it. Send the scramble jets. Communicate. Intercept. Don't shoot down, but intercept. Now, no one knows where this plane is.
It's unbelievable. I mean, this plane it could not have flown, across, 7 countries without the military of those countries picking up the radar. Number one, it's impossible. It doesn't make sense.
And the worst part is for the families. My heart
Oh,
goes
it's
out
terrible.
to them because, you don't know. It's one thing at least to know what happened. It's another whole different thing. For days on end, there's just no answers coming forth.
It's terrible.
It is really heartbreaking, but our story will continue to watch and see what happens. But tenders have become a word that Kenyans keep hearing in the news. Botched tenders, scandalous tenders, and the laptops was in the news all of last week. And laptop tender price was topped up by 1.4 billion shillings. That's what a review board is saying on page 5.
Now just imagine smart. The laptop is the baby of Uhuru. Much as the FPE, free primary education, was Kibaki's baby. Now, it's run into all manner of issues. First of all, even from its inception, laptops, is that the way to go? We've talked about that here many times, where a lot of children are learning under trees, are challenged, without food. Is a laptop really what they should be carrying, or should we be investing in labs? So I think the laptop thing was wrong-headed. I think it's something that was a cut and paste move, in the heat of campaign, to challenge the other side, to appear digital, to give something really compelling. And now, the straw that breaks a camel's back is even this, controversial yet big, huge initiative has been dogged by controversy, with a company bearing the name of a soap manufacturer getting such a big tender to deliver these machines, only for it to turn out that they were probably helped on that tender, that there was, malfeasance on the paperwork. And what's the bottom line? Uhuru's been talking a lot about ending corruption, what have you. Kamenyi's got to go yesterday, and everybody knows it. And Kenyans are just watching to see how Jubilee plays.
Do you think he'll go?
I don't know, but you know what? Charity didn't go. Kamenyi doesn't go. Uhuru's window to solidify or for perceptions about his stand on corruption to set in is closing fast. But a year and a half, anything he does after that, Kenyans will already have their minds made up. Just like happened with Kibaki's government. Once Anglo-Leasing set in proper with their very own PS, ethics and governance, giving the kind of testimony he did and running away, Sophia, at that point, we've lost the battle. And so Kenyans will support you another step, but the perception that smart is corrupt will have set in and settled, and that's the end. Uhuru still has a small remaining window now to prove that he absolutely detests and doesn't stand for corruption. This is just terrible.
And James, what some analysts are saying, that this is all to divert attention from the fact that it is it's a promise that was very close to the president's heart. He kept talking about it, and now that they were unable to deliver in time, so they come up with this whole thing, so that later on they can say, oh yeah, it's this whole process that made us not deliver.
I think you're right. I think
That's possible.
I think it's
Conspiracy.
two things here. One, it was a president's pet project. He went on with it, and he gave a 100-day promise. On his own inauguration, made a whole speech and a whole promise about it. So it's very close to his heart.
True.
That is true. Then how to go about it has been the big issue, and I think that's what his team were trying to work away with. So the conversation was, it would have made a lot of sense if you put that 24 billion and make whoever you're giving that tender and tell him, one, we need that factory here in Kenya. That way we give the jobs back here.
Correct.
And we bring the technology, transfer technology from whatever it is here. That would have been the correct approach. It would have made a lot of sense economically. It would have made a lot of sense for us to do this, because these laptops, if you give the kids today, the next week you have a whole lot of backlog that are not working, that have been stolen, that have
soil and sand.
Right. So
can imagine.
that would have made a lot of sense. But I think the way that they chose to go about it is where they're going to get all these difficulties and the problems, because one, the tendering process is a whole animal, as we've seen, it's a whole animal, and probably someone inside that administration wanted to make something out of this. And then you give Olive, who are not the original producers.
Equipment manufacturer,
Yeah.
OEM, yeah.
And they're
It
moving
doesn't
to
make
court.
sense.
They're moving to court.
Well,
appeal.
Everyone's moving to court nowadays.
everyone can
And
move to
that's
court.
ridiculous.
Even after this show, we can move to court.
Yeah.
You know, to cancel this show. But
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense, you know. And I think that this is some of the issues that he's walking around, you know, around it. And I think for him, this is when someone would say, you know, this when you call for leadership. You know, my friend Dennis likes saying, you know, this when leadership comes in. He needs to come in and say, well, this is a project that
Dennis
is
not Itu.
Dennis Osarigo. Yeah, this is not one of the things that we're not very well thought out. Number one, I'm willing and ready to go back, you know, and relook into
He'll
this
actually
thing.
score more points if he does it
Yes,
smart.
because I mean that's what leadership is about. It's
Yeah.
about looking at things and say,
Absolutely.
well, I'll lead you this way, and it hasn't worked. There's no road here.
Absolutely.
Let's go back. Let's
Yeah.
find another road.
I'm going to change my mind because I'm not a fool.
Yeah.
That's what leadership is about. Smart is right. Osarigo is right. But sometimes, you know, the chauvinistic pride checks in, and you feel, oh, if I take a step back, you know, my assailants will assault, will go on the
They'll
offensive.
take advantage.
Will take advantage, will attack me. But, you know, how about doing what is right? And we all know what is right.
Well, in the meantime, in the lands sector, a tussle continues there. It's Maki, the land commissioner. He was here. We spoke quite a bit about,
I saw him.
you know, the conflict
Swazuri, is that his
between-
name?
Yeah,
Yes.
Swazuri and the minister. And this is stalling so many projects, the differences between the two. And it's everybody fighting for what they believe is what they should be doing, their rights, their space. In the meantime, work is not happening. They're not working.
Indeed, and Sazuri was here, and his point was very clear. It's the way we've read the law. He said from the commission's perspective, we've read the law and we understand it.
What exactly is he
as
refusing to do?
Well, the problem is that the National Lands Commission, as was envisaged in the Constitution, was supposed to be one key center whereby you get to go to the registry. They're the ones who take care of matters, land issues, and whatnot. You know, looking back, and they had a window of period whereby they'd look at land injustices and what happens and whatnot. Big problem number one, when the president and the deputy went to Mombasa and gave out, you know, small amount of title deeds. Problem is that one, those title deeds, you know, they were never registered. You know, no one knows, you know, if the commissioning was just, you know, the paper of it as he spoke here and said, well, those papers, it needs a whole lot of work to do before they actually become a title. Now we just
What?
give,
He said that?
Yes.
Yeah, he said it's not official.
He said it's not official. We gave the end of it, but
It
for you
was
to
a
get
PR
title,
activity,
yeah,
according to
yeah,
him.
there are a lot of activities that are supposed to go. So
Yeah.
for them, they feel that that should have been their mandate. It requires a lot of expertise and technical work. The ministry should be leading the policy end of land matters
Right.
and land issues. Land adjudication and what technical issues about land should be dealt with the National Lands Commission. So that's the tussle in between now. Our reading of the Constitution.
He better watch out for his safety and security. I mean, because that's a
No.
that's a super.
But it's
potent
not
issue.
him, the person.
Well, he's the leader.
Yeah,
Entire
the big issue
commission.
here is that we have a National Lands Commission that if it's not its workability, you know, just like the implementation of the if we don't get it right, then it missed an entire mandate of how to deal with the land issues in this country.
But also you wonder, James, where is CIC in, you know, just interpreting and helping set everyone's record straight, you know, because if it's the two of you,
Good point,
you
Sophia.
know, arguing out, and then I'm the person charged with how this is interpreted and how it's implemented, I come and say, you know, your role is this and this, yours is the other, and then let's move on, because you cannot keep going around in circles.
Good point, Sophia. I think, as always, anytime you have a challenge on power, and that's pretty much how you could read this, that the ministry feels threatened, that some of its traditional powers are being usurped or taken away or hived off, and that's the resistance. At the same time, the National Land Commission is probably a product of civil society, you know, a
Yeah.
checks and balances thing, a watchdog, you know, from the outside and saying, wait a minute, that's not right, these are excesses, etc. Way forward, again, leadership. But from who? But from who?
But from who?
But from who?
And the strike continues. If the people in university, Akuna classes, the Dons still on strike.
The thing about that story is that, well, they're not striking against the government. They're striking against the institution, the
Yeah,
university.
yeah.
The government gave them money. Professor...
Again, Professor Kamenyi was one of those.
yes,
dons.
inside
By
the
the
dons.
way, yes,
Yeah.
And it
Who
was
received the
supposed
money.
to be paid in 2 tranches.
Yeah.
So what happened is there was supposed to be a 3.9 billion in the beginning,
Yeah.
then the next one, the final
Yeah.
one in the next year. That was in the last quarter.
But they went and paid other bills.
So when these guys came through, the first 3.9 billion, it was divided into 2. You know, so they gave them half of 3.9 and the next half. Then the next money that came through, they never gave them the money. So now we're stuck because the university said, well, we put, off-site universities with it. We
Right.
made buildings, and whatnot. So we don't have the money. And the government says, well, we gave you the money. So we are stuck. Someone has to produce some 3.9 billion or 4 billion in the next few days because the guys are not going back to work. It's a negotiated CBA. It was supposed to be paid yesterday. And right now they're just claiming their money, which was released from
This
the treasury.
country has a problem with the character of its leaders. I've said this before. By and large, a leader, a president, a chancellor, a cabinet secretary, an elected member of parliament, by and large, more than anything else, has to be fundamentally a good person, fundamentally a fair person, fundamentally an honest person. Once you miss that, it's a big mess. I don't know if any of you guys saw the article by George Kigoro in the dailies yesterday. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions has really woken up, has really now aspired to fill that space that was left by the Chief Justice once, this mess happened a year ago and he just lost, the star sparkle that he had. And Kigoro's argument, the director of ICJ, International Committee for Jurists, is that somehow courts are finding a way to limit the director of the prosecutor's prosecutorial powers by giving such grounds as, you two go and reconcile, or you can't prosecute, or you can't arrest. And that's ridiculous because the discretion to prosecute lies with the director after investigations. And why all this is important is because these cases are always tilted towards protecting powerful people, influential people, people in power. And so wrongdoing can continue, knowing very well, for example, that Kimunya, if it was you, all right, you'd have spent the whole weekend in police cells and gone to court this morning. But he just left, got a chance to address media after 3 hours and went home to his house in Muthaiga. And this is very important if we're building a state. We must not divide Kenya into two, into the country of the powerful and the ordinary. You cannot. Law has got to apply across the board, for all, if we're going to entrench the rule of law and constitutionalism in this country.
Okay.
Yes.
The Star newspaper today leads with MPs summon GDC board management overround. So that is CEO's multi-billion deals were quote-unquote not approved. So we have the National Assembly has summoned the board and the management of the Geothermal Development Corporation. And this is after wrangles broke out pitting the chairman, Simon Gesharu, against CEO Stella Stimiu over a raft of allegations. Again, one of those stories, quite a number of issues around.
I think it's got to be said that one of the areas I really strongly agree with the president on is, you get the feeling that Uhuru is really worried about the financial situation, the wage bill, etc., the spending, the ratio of, expenditure vis-a-vis GDP, vis-a-vis tax collection base, etc. Now, add on to that the daily looting, because every newspaper here daily, all right, has got looting in a different shape and form. So here it's GDP, some sort of row involving multi-billion deals which are not approved. Here you've got an audit again of billions of NHIF, and then here you've got basically that's 800 MCAs to be eliminated. Those cost 1.2, etc. You get the feeling, Sophia, that if we continue this way unchecked, we're going to loot this country dry. And I cannot, for one, believe that this is a conversation we're having 15 years after the exit of Kanu, so to speak. Because people felt that, the looting and the whatnot of the 90s would come to a stop once we had properly entrenched democracy and multi-party politics. But I really worry for where we're headed.
Are you suggesting, Benji, that in the last 10
poverty
years,
is getting worse.
In the last 10 years, in the last administration, that there was no looting?
There was, and that's what I'm saying. It's getting worse. No, I'm actually suggesting that it's getting worse. It's only that the economy grew. All right, the economy
Corruption
grew
has been a
in
thorn in
fivefold.
Kenya's
Yeah, and it's a thorn really that has to come out, that has to be taken out.
Yeah. All right. We have Wetangula on page 2 says he will move to Supreme Court over ruling. The Bungoma senator just when he thought his woes were done.
I never thought they were done. If you looked at the text of, I don't know. No, if you look at the report from the last time, I don't know if Smart looked at it because I did. The findings were actually that he had quote unquote treated voters. That was the basis upon which they actually
treated
nullified.
or bribed.
They call it the parlance is treated, which means bribed.
Okay.
Technically, therefore, he actually shouldn't have been allowed to buy again. So when he was, to me, that was a bit confusing. Now it turns out that he is still going to be prosecuted. I think someone's going to court this week on this issue of treatment, which, if found to be true under Article 71, he actually gets barred from contesting in the future for, I think, 5 years or more.
Several years, yeah.
For 7 years. Yeah, 5 years or more. I know my law, Sophia. I don't play.
Oh, please. Page 7.
So, yes, his wars are not far, are by no means over.
All right, and page 7 has Nairobi police bosses meet over rising crime. They have agreed to increase police patrols, and they're talking about profiling of criminals as new strategies to deal with rising crime in Nairobi. So again, as much as we're talking about the wage bill, security still continues to be quite a challenge, and one that the police and all stakeholders must, bring their heads together to address, James.
Matter security. There's Sophia, and it cannot be overemphasized. Just the other day, some 2-3 thugs were killed in the CBD, and there were all these cases of people getting their things stolen in the car, phones and whatnot. So it's an increased kind of insecurity in Nairobi,
and especially the suburb areas. That has been,
especially Karen, it's been
Karen,
terrible. It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
It's completely out of control. And what we need is not rhetoric. What we need are formulae. A formula to do this, a formula to do that. What my suggestion would be a good resumption of a clean, disciplined, and efficient reservist force comprising of urbane, youthful, educated, suave, young men and women. So that at any one time, because it's becoming too much, you need the element of surprise. And it worked very well in the 90s until I think Hussein Ali stopped it, where if you do a robbery and Smart could very well be an armed officer, you don't know, as well as a media practitioner. That is really the way to go, because we cannot continue in this way where ordinary Kenyans and any Kenyans really are being held hostage. Sophia, they're just coming into people's houses, they torment you, they eat, they torture. It's crazy. It's completely out of control.
Still,
yeah, it is.
It's the way you said
terrible.
the eating part. But still on the same page, an interesting story. Jubilee MPs are slamming ODM over probe on the men in black. So apparently ODM asked members of the public who may have information on the men in black to submit it. And this, of course, after we had numerous members of ODM say that these men in black are known to ODM. And so you have the majority leader in the National Assembly, Aden Duale, saying it is absurd for ODM to ask Kenyans to provide information on the men in black when they are known to the party. The men have been part
the government
of
does the same
ODM
thing.
for a long time.
The government does the same thing. So let's not waste Kenyans' time, Sophia. What I think would be a more judicious expenditure of time is to look at the ODM story on page 4, right
but
at the
still,
bottom.
why are you skipping that one?
Because what's there to discuss in that story? That story is weird. That story is cryptic. The Prime Minister himself was sitting there, former PM.
It's not weird, still, and cryptic, Benji.
No, it is. I mean, I don't
know.
I don't have anything to say on that story. I mean, these were operatives of the party itself. I think the party was infiltrated. They had to find a way out. This is what they did. These guys were robotic. We talked about that. These guys had one. The ODM did not report.
Infiltrated means these were not part of the party. They were from outside.
No, I think it was being stopped because it was infiltrated, and whoever was destined to win was not the actual people that the establishment wanted. So that's the way it is.
What is the story you're saying?
Page 4, at the bottom, still on ODM. And I just mark it out because it's important to learn the lessons. So Simba Arati, who was going for the deputy party leader position.
Party leader
position,
yeah,
right? And is the MP for Dagoretti. Well, he's a former councillor of sorts from City Hall. I've had all manner of allegations against the guy. So he has been replaced as ODM chair in Dagoretti, all right, by the guy he beat, Collins Ndisio. So there's a lot to read through that within the party. Area delegates expressed dissatisfaction in the manner in which Harati has been running party affairs. They've said that the MP has been running ODM like a, quote, personal kiosk. So there's a lot to learn from this kind of stuff, especially for young guys smart. You want to look at what ails this country. How does a young guy like this start running into serious headwinds and problems, what is it about the way that he's doing things that is just not, that is just not doing it, that's not happening?
I mean, like they say, Benji, matters politics and anything else. The young men know the rules, the older men know the exceptions. Right. So I think for the young politicians, and I think these new elections, the last elections brought in all manner of young politicians.
Characters.
Yes. I mean, they need to learn, but they're trying to learn the rules. But your people, the old habits, will know the exemptions to those rules that you're learning, and they think you're judicial and you're making a lot of noise about it. You might burn your fingers, while at it. And most of them enthusiastic, eager, and they should be as flamboyant and vibrant as they want and they can be. But I think it serves no purpose for that young generation to be, in the end, after 5 years, they say, you know what, we tried these young fellows and they were absolutely happy.
In fact, I'm surprised when he uses the words enthusiastic, eager, etc. I've not seen many MPs at all that are enthusiastic, eager, unless you're talking about salaries. Unless you're talking about salaries, we don't have real MPs
Firebrands.
that are firebrands, that are the shikukus of their day at all, or the tomboyers of their day,
that are passionate
about, that are ideologues.
That is true.
We just have MPs that really, and we had Kanini Kega here the other day, and I assailed him big time because we have MPs who just want a Range Rover and who want more allowances and who want to travel.
I think the whole point of that is, I mean, whether they are in ODM
this is the
or
Kenya
in
we've
TNA
become.
or in URP, the point is that most of them, they came in as the young, they came up
Young
under that
tucks.
young umbrella, So what they need to do is that they need to look beyond themselves, because this a position that they're occupying today, like we say about Kimuna, this a few short years ago, he was the power. Anything you'd say was the power. So they need to look at where they are today, the positions they're holding today, and not getting too carried away, in the power of the day, and getting all manner of things. They should be doing actual things, trying to make sure that they differentiate their kind of ideas and leadership and plans from the whole hands.
But when it comes to believing in something, when it comes to having the drive for something, when it comes to passion on something, we've talked about MPs, but as much as we criticize on this show, we must be fair enough and give credit where it's due. True believers, for example, of devolution, against all odds, for the greater good, for the long term, somebody like Governor Isaac Ruto, you've got to hand it to him that this guy put his foot down and he really wants to deliver something. That is probably, in fact, I realized that's probably how he became the chairman of the Council of Governors. And that must be said, because you don't see much of that in...
And so how has he proven that?
If you follow what happens, you'll see that he is consistent, that he is really fighting for, to the point that he's fighting his own backyard, his own party, his own establishment, and saying, do not threaten devolution at all.
But Governor Ruto is an operator. I mean, he's been in the Kano days. He's an old hand in politics.
I don't know much about him, and maybe that's why.
Yes. I mean, he's been assistant minister in Moi days.
Okay. I thought he was a former teacher, that he was just a teacher, then he got elected.
No. This is not the first time.
He's been around.
Yeah, he's been around.
He's been around.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time. So he's an old hand into this. And I mean, yes.
He's a tough guy.
Yes,
Don't you agree?
No, absolutely. I mean,
He's a tough
whether you
governor.
agree and disagree with him, he's one of those people like Aidan Duale who, out there, he would make his point. You don't like him, but he would say, and would say what it is. So,
well, Duale is what you call a shoutant, so I didn't want to...
Devolution, that conversation continues as you're talking about those who are
parallels.
claiming that it's under threat, and the headline in The People captures the conversation we've been seeing recently. So bill to eliminate 800 MCAs is on the way, and it's seeking that solution to cut the wage bill again. So legislators rally forces to craft a motion that will see all nominated members of the county assembly sent home, and number of counties combined in effort to check the huge wage bill, but say they have not been prompted by the executive. So there's...
Someone made a good point about the nominated officials and said, well, if they're not, the disabilities, that they have some sort of disabilities, and we look at all those disabilities and say, we'll get someone who's blind, someone who cannot walk, and all these things, and someone who cannot hear. Those are the kind of leverage that you want to give. Otherwise, someone made the point that in this new constitution, we made sure that our representation was up to the detail. That we have the smallest of units that are being represented from the county assemblies to the constituencies and the counties. That we have no recourse whatsoever to bring in Benji Ndolo as nominated MP for whatever reason. What does Benji Ndolo represent?
You know,
The youth, what?
Yeah.
you know, let me turn this argument on its head. Conversely, you know, the problem with this country is more of its culture. It's the culture. It's not even so much the wage bill, as much as we need to save money, etc. Smart. So let's just think for a moment, Sophia, that a leader in Kenya, a politician, an MCA, an MP, a senator, a governor, was the most outstanding, most civilized, civil, proper, hardest working, kindest Kenyan we could find out there. Because in developed countries, these are the kind of people that you find out there, the best of the best, right? In that case, representation would be the more the better. In our case, though, what we have is the most egotistical parasites. So you've got people who suck out of the national kitty, all right, and who want to lord it over you, and who feel if they even come and do a harambe in your church that they're doing you a favor. So, because of the lack of paradigm, you know, with which we define our leadership, basically we've got so many of the bad guys. You understand? That's all I'm saying. In this country, you've got basically mafia characters as governors. We've got the craziest characters as senators and MPs. So obviously, given that lack
Elected
of
by
character,
the people.
yes, elected by the people, nominated, well, call it what you want, but given that it's going to be colorless, it's going to be undesirable, and so I think again, it's not a question of representation. If we had 47 upstanding and outstanding governors, smart, don't you think the country would be the better? The answer is yes.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way it is. They're in there because they were voted by the people, and the people will have another opportunity to either keep them in there or get a whole new batch of fresh faces. We'll have to wait to see.
Including all manner of suspects in all manner of courts.
But then again,
sad but true.
But then again, we saw the whole impeachment, which had come in as a craze. Let's see if anybody else will face the axe in the next.
And in order to face the axe, obviously the weapon of bribing is always there, which is also in itself is corruption. Again, the culture. It's crazy, but there's got to be hope.
Thank you very much for joining us on The Way
Thank you. You look well, Sophia.
What do you mean I look well?
You know, she was unwell last week, so it's good to see that you're well. You're
Thanks.
better.